at that time. Let me, Laura Meckler, haven't seen you in a while. How are you?
Well, this is the only briefing of the week. That's why you haven't seen me.
You're doing a little traveling. President came out, took some questions.
My question is a follow-up on the Keystone question, which I didn't feel like you answered sort of the nub of Jennifer's question, which was, why did he feel the need to make these calls? He obviously doesn't make calls on every piece of legislation that's up there. We understand.
Well, maybe he does, and you just don't hear about it. Look, the President obviously has communications with members of Congress with some regularity. We have made our position clear about purely ideological and political efforts to attach legislation regarding the Keystone Pipeline to whatever some members of Congress fancy at the time, right? So it is not, it is a piece of false advertising to suggest that somehow passing legislation and having it made law that Keystone ought to be approved is somehow A, going to have any impact on the price of gas at the pump, which is very high and which Americans are having to endure right now, or B, is responsible policy in any way when there isn't even a proposed route for that pipeline to travel.
So does he believe that there's some risk that the Senate Democrats do not understand those points?
I think that we have made these points very clear. We will continue to make these points very clear, and we certainly expect that the Congress will, or at least we hope that the Congress will act in an appropriate fashion and not waste its time with ineffectual sham legislation that has no impact on the price of gas and is irresponsible because it, as we've said before, tries to legislate the approval of a pipeline for which there is not even a route. And so we'll keep making that point in telephone calls from the podium, maybe fly a Cessna overhead with a banner, something like that.
And how many senators did he call?
I don't have specifics for you on the phone calls the President may have made.
May have made?
He did. Yeah, he made some calls. Sure. I'll confirm that. Yes, Margaret.
I was going to ask you who he called. Can you give us some?
I don't have I don't have any names to give you.
Would you have any names to give us later if we followed up with you?
No, not necessarily. I mean, the President makes a lot of phone calls. This one, happened to be the fact that he made some calls happened to make it into a press report, and I'm confirming that he did, but I'm not going to get into individual names or length of conversation.
Can you tell us whether other administration officials also had made calls? In other words, did Joe Biden make calls? Who else in the administration?
I don't have any readouts of phone calls to give you beyond what I just said.
Can I ask you about the Virginia